Holy cow. Dallas Cowboys history has been completely twisted by the media. And I'm going to be honest, y'all, I feel lied to. As somebody that was born in the early 90s, I was a young whippersnapper for majority of the Cowboys' winning years in the 90s. But what we have all digested since the 90s is essentially the story that's been regurgitated, twisted, exaggerated to depict an entirely different story than what we as Cowboys fans should remember about our actual organization. Now, I want to be very, very clear. I am not up here trying to convince anybody that Jerry Jones is the best GM in the world. Could he have done a better job of being able to maintain the success of the 90s by drafting better? Yes, he absolutely could have. But also, it's kind of unreasonable to think, especially since we have now seen this exact thing take place once again with the New England Patriots. Since their dynasty, have they looked anything similar or even close to what they were at the time when they started winning? Absolutely not. I think we as Cowboys fans have kind of lost context of the fact that it's very hard to win in the NFL. I mean, for instance, it's been 30 years since we won a Super Bowl, and only 2 teams still have more Super Bowls than the Dallas Cowboys. And one of those teams had more Super Bowls than the Cowboys beforehand. So that should tell you in itself that's not something that's so easy to do, that there's a ready-made blueprint of how to do it. In fact, I seriously implore every Dallas Cowboys fan to watch America's team, the Gambler and His Cowboys. And not to hate watch it, but to inform yourselves and give yourselves proper context of the history of your organization, at least in the Jones era of football. It is not told through the lens of Jerry Jones and his family, so it's twisted and made only from one POV. It's told through the lenses of everyone, whether they were someone on the side of Jerry or on the opposite side of Jerry. It's told through the lens of everyone. And when you hear it done that way, it gives you total and proper context as to what really went on with our team. We're about to get into this because I think it is extremely important that we as fans treasure our team lore and we protect our team history. Because at this point, the media has damn near completely blinded everyone to the point to where y'all can't even enjoy being a Dallas Cowboy fan anymore. I know that was probably one of the longest intros I've ever done on this channel, but man, this is such a necessary video, and I really hope people give it a chance to watch it at least majority of the way through, because there were so many things that I want to talk to you guys about and actually break down as it pertains to the actual dynamics of what was happening with this organization at various points. Let's get right into this one, man. And y'all be sure to subscribe for more Dallas Cowboys content. And now more than ever, I see that I'm needed to correct the narrative and correct the history of the Dallas Cowboys, so that way we can embrace the future with open arms. Let's get right into it. Shut your up. First things first, Jerry Jones. This documentary should teach you everything you need to know about why Jerry Jones does what he does, what motivates him, what makes him tick, what makes him sensitive, what makes him buck the authority or buck the system in a sense, and what type of stuff he just won't stand for. And honestly, this documentary is something that Micah Parsons and his team need to go watch right now, because what this has shown you is Jerry will not be strong-armed, especially if he has any monicule of leverage. He will not be strong-armed. So the one thing I want to jump to and kind of bring this to current-day Cowboys, so this ain't all about the 90s, because everything I'm about to talk about today, y'all, we're going to loop this back to current day, because we want to live in the present, so again, we can embrace the future. But man, Micah, David Mulligetta, y'all are not going to win a standoff with Jerry Jones, especially not when he has the kind of leverage that he has, especially not when he's personally invested at this point. Now, I don't know if his feelings were hurt to the degree that they were hurt with Jimmy Johnson. We're going to get to that whole scenario in just a second. But man, you can tell that Jerry's feelings are personally invested. And if you watch this documentary and you piece together what has actually happened with the Cowboys and this Micah Parsons situation, now I see why things are getting a little muddy, why the waters are getting a little muddy. But first things first, man, this dude right here endured so much scrutiny, so much vitriol, so much just ridicule for purchasing the Dallas Cowboys, a franchise that at that time was hopeless, hapless, and had nothing going for it. It had a head coach, a legend as he was, had a head coach that was starting to experience some signs of old age. It had an owner who was trying to get out of Dodge because he wasn't making money. And that's the first thing I want to bring some extra attention to, y'all. Do y'all realize how bad things could actually be for Cowboys fans had the previous owner sold the Dallas Cowboys to anybody else, not named Jerry Jones, to anybody else who maybe wasn't invested in the actual football operations as Jerry Jones may have been? If they had just sold it to another owner who just wanted to add something to his portfolio, do y'all know what this organization could have actually been? Because the only reason, and I'm going to say this, and I don't care how much hate I get, the only reason the Cowboys were successful in the 90s, the only reason they even had a chance to do any of that stuff was because Jerry Jones was put into place. And because Jerry Jones not only was put into place, he had already had a plan of who to bring with him was going to be the perfect complement to fill in the gaps that his football knowledge didn't quite fill himself. He brought Jimmy Johnson essentially to fill in those holes for him. Is where he was deficient in football, Jimmy Johnson was sufficient, actually above sufficient, right? He brought Jimmy Johnson with him. And then on top of that, the timing of how everything took place. And this right here should kind of, if you put this in perspective, this should let you know how incredibly hard it is to win a Super Bowl, because I don't think that you could just take any star receiver or any receiver that was a highly drafted receiver and put him in that situation that Michael Irvin was put in and him have the same type of impact overall on the success and the future of that team the way Michael Irvin did. The timing of Michael Irvin being a guy that was coming out of the University of Miami at the time that Jerry was buying the Cowboys. And then the Cowboys pick a Michael Irvin, and then Jimmy Johnson, this will happen to be coaching Michael Irvin at the same time, but then he came, and so you had that familiarity there to where you had one of your soldiers with you, and you had that already established connection and relationship with Jimmy Johnson and a Michael Irvin, to where Michael Irvin could be, I guess, kind of like the right-hand man to help Jimmy kind of get everything in order, to get things in check early on in the process as the team was struggling early on. So just even the sheer luck of that, of how everything fell that way, that right there was huge. And then the balls, the absolute courage, the fearlessness for Jerry Jones to trade Herschel Walker, that being essentially his best asset at that time in that organization. Again, an organization that was failing financially and in the perception of the public. The Cowboys were failing, bro. That the brand of the Cowboys that we know today, it wouldn't be what it was had the Jones family not come in and did what they did with the brand. And that is just being honest, y'all. That's just facts. It wouldn't have the relevancy. Most of us wouldn't care the way that we do. Obviously, the people that's been watching the team since the 70s and 80s, y'all would still care because y'all are long-term fans. But as far as you old heads having a younger generation to be able to actually immerse yourselves in and be able to still have that same type of energy and excitement about the star, that wouldn't be there because the team was not something that would encourage a younger generation to want to follow it. Bro, I got so much I want to talk about. This video probably may be really long. I don't know if I'm going to edit it, but maybe having a lot of mess ups and stuff because it's so much I want to talk about with this, and I don't want to put on a live stream because I feel like my videos get out to more people. So, okay. So with that right there already needed some luck. You trade Herschel Walker, and this is where you got to give Jerry a ton of credit. Again, something that wouldn't have happened had Jerry not been the businessman that he was. Maybe not knowing about running teams and stuff, but how to do deals. Jerry got that deal where he was able to convert those 5 players into 5 picks had they released those 5 players. They released those 5 players. Minnesota Vikings president didn't think he was going to do it, or GM didn't think he was actually going to do that. Jerry actually did it, got those picks, was able to reload the team, and now, boom, you have a young team loaded with talent, and now you just kind of got to take time for everything to bake. That's where Jimmy took over. That's where the expertise of Jimmy Johnson comes into play. And obviously, we all know how great Jimmy Johnson was. That man was an absolute sicko, divorced his wife, fully immersed himself into helping Jerry Jones and helping that organization and the Cowboys be what they were during that 90s run. Absolutely. We're not going to take a single ounce of credit from Jimmy Johnson at all, bro. And I got to be very clear, bro. We're not talking about this to disparage any of these legends or anything, bro. We're talking about this to put this in proper context and perspective for newer fans and older fans that may be confused because y'all didn't have all this information available to y'all initially, bro. But remember, all this stuff was going on and Jerry was getting absolutely slaughtered by everyone. The media, he getting called country hicks, don't know what you're doing, don't know nothing about football. Oh, we're never going to win again. Jerry came in and hired Jimmy and got rid of Tom Landry. Stupidest guy ever. He's getting killed. Absolutely destroyed, right? He don't know anything. Then the Cowboys actually start winning. Him and Jimmy put their heads together, spend countless nights actually trying to make this thing work. And again, Jerry probably invested more energy into this than any owner would have, and possibly any other GM would have, because any other GM wouldn't have had as much skin in the game. So we don't know if another GM would have really been in the trenches the way that Jerry was in the early stages of this thing with Jimmy to figure this thing out to the point where Jerry is getting a heart arrhythmia because he wasn't sleeping, bruh, because he's at Valley Ranch all day and night. So we gotta give credit where it's due. And the biggest thing that I think is the biggest lie that's continuously been perpetuated is about the Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones falling out. And it all happened because of Jerry's ego, and he wanted all the credit for winning the Super Bowls and all that stuff. We're going to skip to that because we kind of know how the Super Bowls and all that stuff took place. But I got to say, none of that stuff would have happened. None of the Super Bowls would have taken place had the Cowboys not gotten Michael Irvin as the first piece to that puzzle. At all. None of that would have taken place. That took a stroke of luck. None of that would have taken place had the Cowboys not been able to draft someone like a Troy Aikman as the quarterback coming out of college that year. Again, timing, luck. A lot of this stuff is timing and luck, man. And then being able to get Emmitt Smith and trade up to the 17th pick and draft the Emmitt Smith. Again, timing and luck. How it just so happened all the perfect exact pieces that they needed became available to them the year that they needed them, or they were within reach of being available. So if you wanted to really get them, you could make something happen and go get it, right? All that stuff was timing and luck. And then you start winning championships. And remember, you put in all this work. You and your coach, that y'all built this thing from the ground up essentially, and essentially saved it from the fire pits, all while enduring an ungodly amount of criticism and scrutiny and just micro analysis. And I mean, people going at his throat. I mean, if y'all watch this, bruh, those reporters were going at Jerry's throat. And remember that point, because remember, when Jerry took over, the media had all essentially said, hey, this is going to be bad. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. Jerry Jones equals bad for football. That's essentially what the story was for the media that they were pushing to everyone. Then they win these Super Bowls. Jerry and Jimmy Johnson's relationship falling out and breaking apart, and Jimmy Johnson having to leave from the team was not about Jerry Jones specifically wanting credit for Super Bowls. It was more about respect or the lack thereof between these two men than anything else. The only people that ever brought anything up about credit or wanting to take credit for what or anything else like that were the media members. Even in this documentary, y'all, the media members were the only guys who put emphasis on credit for Super Bowls. Jerry and Jimmy, their beef was about respect. Jerry wanted his respect for the role that he played in helping build this team, and he wanted the respect from a Jimmy Johnson, who he respected his football mind. He wanted Jimmy Johnson to at least respect or acknowledge that Jerry has somewhat of a football mind or a football mind to help build the team that they built. Jimmy wanted the respect of Jerry to let him do things the way that he knows best to do for that organization, because Jimmy knows the role that he played in helping build the Cowboys into what they were and the input that he gave into the moves that the Cowboys made. So it was more so about respect, y'all. It wasn't about credit for Super Bowl wins. It was about each of these individuals' egos getting involved, because each of these individuals felt like the other wasn't given enough respect for the roles that they were playing and what they were accomplishing together, the successes that they were experiencing together. Neither one of these fellas felt like they respected or got enough respect from each other. And that's what ultimately blew the relationship up. And the reason this is important is because this is a major lie in Cowboys history, bruh. Cowboys fans have been led to believe that Jerry Jones was the devil in this situation, when honestly, these were just two men. These were just two men that had flaws as human beings and as men, and they were prideful, and both of their egos got involved. And the biggest difference, and you'll see it when Barry Switzer won his championship versus when Jimmy Johnson won his, the biggest difference was Jimmy Johnson more so wanted it to be about he wanted to be more about what he did. He wanted to make sure that he's the one that got the credit for it because Jimmy sacrificed so much. He divorced his wife. He left his kids. All this, he did all that stuff to be the coach, to make sure that he fully invested into that goal that they were trying to set out to accomplish. I get it, but that's not to say you're not wrong for that. Because again, it's not about percentages of who's getting credit for what or anything like that. Like Barry Switzer said, we did it. We did it. Regardless of anything else, we did it. And Jerry, with the level of investment and involvement he has with the organization, at the end of the day, that's all he wanted was the respect of one of his employees, one of his guys that he's been in the foxhole with, to be able to acknowledge that, hey, we did it together. This thing all blew up when Jerry Jones, now we take things back to a business perspective. There was at the owners meeting at Disney, and Jerry Jones came in and he was trying to give a toast. This is after they won a Super Bowl. So he's trying to give a toast to some of his coaches that helped him win that Super Bowl. Two of the coaches gave the toast, and then Jimmy Johnson, hell no. Arms folded, you got me bent, brother. F you. Jerry Jones, not being mature enough and being able to pick his battles and swallow his pride enough, obviously, he took that a certain way. He took that to heart, and he had already felt betrayed. He had already felt like Jimmy Johnson had been being disloyal to him by entertaining talks with Jacksonville, becoming their head coach. Remember, parallels to current day times. Micah Parsons joking about going to play for the Chiefs. Micah Parsons with trade requests. Micah Parsons kind of villainizing Jerry and what he does in the front office in the midst of making that trade request and that big long-ass note. What did Jerry say specifically in that damn documentary? He said he couldn't deal with the disloyalty. He couldn't deal with the lack of loyalty shown from Jimmy, and it was just burning him up on the inside. And that ultimately, that feeling of betrayal, that feeling of not being respected by someone that you probably respect and by someone that you felt like you put in a position to give you plenty of respect when it's necessary, that feeling overtook Jerry, and it caused the dissolution of he and Jimmy's relationship in a very messy way. And in no means was that handled in the best way or the most professional way, or should he have done it the way that he did or done it at all? That's up to debate for each individual person. But I know if I run a business, if I own a company, I don't care how good that employee is. If that employee is disrespecting me in front of other employees of that company, I'm going to feel a way too. And I'm going to feel like, you know what? Screw you, bro. You're not the thing that's going to make this boat float. So get the stepping, right? I would feel that way too. Whether it's right or wrong, I would feel that way because we're human. And Jerry, in that moment, had a very human moment. And quite frankly, he and Jimmy both, in my opinion, based off of watching this and hearing everyone's perspective, he and Jimmy both deserve probably equal credit for the way things ended up in Dallas. Straight up. That's just what it is. There is no good guy. There is no bad guy. That's the story that should be being perpetuated to Cowboys fans and the younger generation, is both of those men played their parts. It was an unfortunate situation for the franchise, but both men played their role. That's what should be getting told as it pertains to Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones. And that is something that is very clear to anybody watching that documentary, the full documentary, with an objective eye. And man, this documentary, if you call yourself a Cowboys fan, put your Jerry hate aside. This is more so about your history of your organization from the 90s on. From the 90s until current day time, essentially. This documentary is more about the history, a catalog of your organization's history, bruh. That's what this is. And you can't call yourself a fan if you don't watch this, because this gives proper context from a non-biased standpoint of what was happening with your team. And you kind of got to read and connect things that people are saying and the context is given, and you'll get the true picture of what you should be looking at. And the true picture is both of these gentlemen deserve their share of the blame. Neither one of these guys are the good guy. Neither one of these guys are the bad guy. Both of these guys let their pride and ego get involved, and both of these guys ruined something that was a very good thing. Moving on, Michael Irvin. Why did y'all lie to me and tell me that Jerry Jones was the reason that the dynasty ended? Why did y'all lie to me and tell me that Jerry Jones was the reason that everything came crashing down? Because, quite frankly, it looked like to me Jerry Jones was an owner that came in and made multiple good decisions that actually helped this franchise win Super Bowls. It looked like to me that the actual seminal moment, to quote someone that said it in the actual documentary, the seminal moment where the Cowboys dynasty started to come crashing down was when everything that the Cowboys players had been doing, all the stuff that we joke about in today's time, the cocaine, the White House, all that stuff, was when all that stuff started to catch up with those dudes, bruh. When finally somebody leaked the video of Michael Irvin talking about getting the line or 3. When finally somebody set up Mike to get caught and having to go to court cases and having to plead no contest and getting plea bargains. Why did nobody tell me that multiple players on the team started getting pulled over with DUIs and all this stuff? Why did nobody tell me it just so happened the time when the Cowboys stopped winning was the time where guys started getting injured as well? Michael Irvin went down. Troy Aikman had 1,000 damn concussions at that point. And again, just the football lifespan of a team and their success and what they're able to accomplish, man. It is unreasonable to think that a team is going to keep everyone together for 10 plus years, for one, and that a team is going to be able to be successful consistently for over a decade, because we haven't really seen that done. The Patriots were probably the last thing we've seen since the Cowboys 90s dynasty. They really did that, and now we're looking at the Chiefs, but even the Chiefs now, they're starting to show the chinks in the armor. They're starting to get guys to slow down. They're starting to get guys to get distracted and fall off, because that's what happens. Because it's unreasonable to think that anybody's going to win every other year forever. That's just not going to happen. So why did nobody actually talk about all the actual things that were going on the field that were out of the control of Jerry Jones, that Jerry had nothing to do as far as influence? If anything, he was a positive influence in helping these dudes stay out of trouble for as long as they were, as it pertains to winning on the field, right? He was a positive influence in that perspective. Why did nobody tell me that all of that stuff was actually the real backdrop of when the Cowboys dynasty started to crumble? Michael Irvin's court case was the point where all that stuff started to happen. Even Jerry firing Jimmy Johnson and then going and hiring Barry Switzer, that right there, that's another decision you could honestly give Jerry credit for. Because when you look at that stuff and put it into perspective and looking at the players and what they had going on and all the noise between Jerry and Jimmy and how contentious that was, man, what other coach could have come in and won a Super Bowl within the first couple of seasons that he was coaching there, bro? What other coach could have come in and actually accomplished that? What other coach could have established those relationships with the players that he established with each and every one of those players? Kind of similar to what Brian Schottenheimer is doing with his players now. What other coach could have come in there and done that the way that Barry Switzer did? We really don't know. So even from that perspective, Jerry made an excellent choice in choosing a coach who had been winning at the collegiate level, and he had experience with, he kind of understood who the man was and whether or not that man would be able to connect to those players. And he was right. Barry came in and he was able to connect to the players. Now, after they won and everything kind of started crashing down and guys started getting arrested and everything, he was connected with them a little bit too much because he was just too real, right? But at the end of the day, that decision still paid off. And at the end of the day, the Cowboys, I believe, went the 99 season before Michael Irvin got hurt. They were 3-0, and they felt like they were on track to go and compete for another Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, the Cowboys had opportunities to win ever since Jimmy's been gone. So it's not like Jerry hasn't been able to, he's been incompetent in putting together teams that could accomplish the ultimate goal. And if you listen to each and every one of those players, you can almost tell that each and every one of those players understand the role that they played in the downfall of the franchise. Even Troy Aikman and the relationship that he and Barry Switzer had, it was almost like he was just a scorned employee that just couldn't get over his former boss being fired, and he was just rebelling against the new guy. I mean, even Troy Aikman had his issues, and we all love Troy. And again, this is nothing negative on these guys. This is just being objectively honest about what we saw, bruh. Even Troy Aikman has contributed negatively as it pertains to the perception of how things actually played out and what things actually were. Troy Aikman was the only guy on that Cowboys team that hated Barry Switzer as much as he did, and he was the only guy, it seems like, that was feeding the media the stories that we as fans have held on to as truths about what and who Barry Switzer was to our organization. He was the only guy doing that, and we allowed that to completely change our perspective of Barry Switzer's value in the history of this franchise, just based off of one player essentially being the guy feeding the media all the negative stories about this guy. And that also contributed to making Jerry look like he didn't know what he was doing, because your quarterback is telling people, oh, this coach is a bad coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. But yet this coach helped y'all get to and win another Super Bowl in a damn near impossible situation. So again, another moment with Jerry Jones, someone who came in incredibly critiqued and heavily criticized. Another moment where he proves the general populace wrong, where he proves the general public wrong, but gets no recognition, gets no acknowledgement for it, gets no credit for that, even though he had to endure hell from everyone. Those same people wouldn't fix their mouths to give Jerry the credit. And when that stuff happened between he and Jimmy went straight into the media. So of course, Jimmy went straight into the media. Of course, the entire media is only going to paint one entity in that situation as the bad guy. Because we have seen, even with myself, I've experienced this myself, the media is going to stand up for the media. Y'all have seen, if y'all been following my channel, the media is going to stand up for the media, guys. And this documentary is crazy because it really makes you realize just how much we have been misled and how deceived we all have been by our history of our organization, and how we've allowed people to deceive us and twist how we view the history of our organization. And it's honestly very unfortunate. It's honestly extremely unfortunate. But again, this just shows me even more so, man, how important it is. How important it is for me to be here to help correct the narrative, to help people and keep proper perspective as part of the conversation, right? And proper perspective honestly tells you it's very hard to win a Super Bowl. Yes, it's been 30 years, but also, yes, there's been at least maybe 3 or 4 teams that Jerry's put together within those 30 years that honestly had a legit chance to win a Super Bowl. You look at 2006, you look at 2014, you look at 2016, honestly, you look at 2021, you look at even 2023, some people feel like that. And that's 5 teams I just named right there that Jerry Jones has put together that when compared against their peers and looking at how they performed up until the moment where they couldn't no more, the team looked like they had a chance. So as much as we want to sit here and say, oh, it's all Jerry's fault, everything is all Jerry's fault, y'all, at the end of the day, do y'all really expect to be competing for Super Bowls every single season, year in and year out? Because if that's the case, then I think that you're being an extremely unreasonable fan. I think you're being an extremely unreasonable human to think that that's how life is going to work. No one wins every single time. And in the NFL, again, 30 years have passed since the Cowboys have won, and nobody's been able to rattle off that many championships. No one's been able to catch up. The Eagles, the Chiefs, none of these teams have been able to actually catch up and pass the Cowboys on how many championships they own. Again, that should tell you just how difficult it actually is. That should tell you there is no one blueprint to how to do it, because again, even with the Cowboys 90 dynasty, there was a lot of luck and timing that played a part in that just as much as anything else. Hell, with the Eagles and their situation, there was a lot of luck involved in Saquon Barkley even becoming available from the New York Giants, and the Giants allowing that situation to deteriorate the way that they were. There was a lot of luck involved in him even being available for the Eagles to pick up to make that move. And he just so happened to have been available at the same time the Cowboys were having to negotiate contracts for their 2 biggest superstars. So proper perspective is very much so necessary, man. And I seriously encourage everyone to go and watch that documentary. Even if you hate Jerry Jones, this is not a fluff piece for Jerry Jones. It is an amazingly done documentary that gives you an exceptionally clear view into what was actually going on with your team during that period of time, and the roles that people play in the success or lack thereof of the Cowboys. Now, Troy Aikman was very critical about Jerry and him not doing his job well enough to help him win and keep this thing rolling. But again, that's what we're talking about, having reasonable conversations. Troy, you had been in the league since 1989, and the Cowboys didn't get to a place where they weren't winning championships every other year or going to a Super Bowl every other year until 1998, brother. 1998 had marked 2 years since y'all had been to a Super Bowl. That marked the first time since those early struggle years that you hadn't been to a Super Bowl or NFC Championship game every other season, bro. So even with that, it's unreasonable to think that that any front office is going to put any group of players in position to compete every single year throughout their entire career. But I get it. I get the criticism. I'm not saying it's false criticism. I'm just saying it's kind of heavy. Now, I want to be very clear. I absolutely want to win a Super Bowl. I absolutely want to be a part of celebrating the Super Bowl win for the Dallas Cowboys. But I absolutely also think that fans have to keep all of this in proper perspective so that way y'all can enjoy the ride. Y'all can enjoy the road to winning that next Super Bowl the way that we should be able to as fans that have been blessed enough to be able to experience a team and to be able to root for a team that are champions, that have had a history of winning, as opposed to other teams that have never had a history of winning, where they're still trying to create their own first bit of history. So I just have to put that out there. Cowboys fans, we got to be a lot more proud in what our organization has been, even under the ownership of Jerry Jones, because quite frankly, for as much negative as we say as Jerry's brought to this organization, he's brought just as much positive, if not more, to not only just this organization, but this league as a whole that we all love to watch in today's time. And that's just being completely honest, y'all. That's being completely honest. Now, I'm not doing this to create no Jerry Jones fans. Again, I'm doing this to give proper perspective. We need to take all this hate as fans. We got to take some of this hate and vitriol that we have in our heart for Jerry Jones. We got to take that out, bro, because it's actually ruining our ability to really be fans of the Dallas Cowboys, bro. Because quite frankly, Jerry ain't out there running routes and catching passes. So it takes everything. It takes everyone. And honestly, it takes luck and timing. And what we allowed to happen is we allowed the media, who was proven wrong, essentially, by Jerry Jones with how they introduced him to the football world, with how they introduced him to the sports world. Jerry proved everything that those people said about him wrong. And what the media do, they looked for the first opportunity to continue to push the narrative that they wanted to push initially, as it was anyways. That Jerry Jones is a backwoods hick from Arkansas that doesn't know what he's doing. And the moment that he and Jimmy Johnson fell out, that's when that narrative went back into full gear. And that's when they've never let go of it again. Because it's much easier and much more fun to talk about how bad Jerry Jones is versus to actually talk about what's happening on the field that's leading the Cowboys into the situations that they're in. Again, there's absolutely been times where this team or organization has been able to put enough talent on the field to be legitimate Super Bowl contenders. But there's also been times, there's been moments where this team has had that talent and they probably just didn't have the right leadership, whether it be a head coach or whatever it may be. There's been times where they've done one thing right, but maybe not the other. They brought the sugar for the Kool-Aid, but they didn't bring the Kool-Aid packet. They brought the Kool-Aid packet, but they didn't bring the sugar. If you want to be mad about that. You cannot be mad about the history of this team because, quite frankly, looking at it from my point of view and what this team was right before Jerry bought them, Jerry Jones added a lot more positive to this organization than he has added negative. And that's just what it is. And Micah Parsons, all these guys, David Mulligetta, man, Jerry went toe-to-toe with the entire NFL. Jerry has lived his entire life off of standing on what he believes in and standing his ground and not being bossed around and pushed around. So for any agent or player out there that thinks or believes that they're going to dictate or change how Jerry Jones is moving and how he lives, man, you are sadly mistaken. It's not going to happen. So there was just a lot. There was just a lot of takeaways that you have from this. I'm interested to see how angry you guys are that I had the takeaway that I had from watching this entire thing. And again, this ain't about trying to make no one look better type of way or anything like that. But at the end of the day, Jerry Jones is a part of our Dallas Cowboy history, and we can't villainize a part of our history that actually brought so much good to our history. And that's just what it is, y'all. You got to take the good with the bad and everything in life. And yes, Jerry Jones has had his moments. Jerry Jones has made mistakes. He still makes mistakes to this day. That doesn't mean he hasn't done a whole hell of a lot of good things, because as much as Troy talked about he didn't get enough help and Jerry was sucking at drafting back then, now that excuse can't be there. The Cowboys have had so many all-pros and pro bowlers that we can't act like that the front office is still inept at being able to put together a football team. They just haven't been able to put together the perfect and complete football team like pretty much every other team has been able to do outside of a couple over the course of the last 30 years. Because there's only maybe 2 or 3 teams I can even think about over the last 30 years I can look at and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty much a perfect football team. Let's keep it real, y'all. Let's keep it real. Either way, let me know what you think about all this stuff down in the comments below. I'll see you guys on the next one. And how about them cows?
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still them boys? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Oh, shut up, my boy. Hey! I'm still them boys.